effects of dams in a region. On the left side, we have various positive effects of dams. On the right side, we have over here negative effects. One that we have is that dams do provide year-round irrigation. They provide plenty of drinking water. They create this huge reservoir right here that provides recreation. The hydroelectric power is created right here by gravity fed down, turning the turbine. And it does reduce the amount of flooding downstream because you're slowly releasing the water and not having it come out at one big time. But some negative effects. The first one up here is that the land has to be flooded. You're destroying trees, forest, crops, you name it. And we're also the biggest one, displacing people out of their homeland. You could get evaporation rates, high evaporation rate of this water in the reservoir. And you're also, the estuaries, you're depriving the estuaries downstream of any of the nutrients that are actually trapped behind this dam. And you're also, another one that's huge is affecting the migration and spawning patterns of the fish. And again, here are some more. Another one for a disadvantage is the cost of a dam. They are extremely expensive, into the millions, possibly close to $1 billion to get them built today. These are listing some other environmental, cultural, and economic and aesthetic negative impacts as well. Please read over these as well. Okay? Now, also, another impact, by having a dam, you're affecting that those rivers are having seasons. None of the churning, overturning, and with the seasons. You're also affecting the water quality. You're affecting the nutrient levels that are in there and the sediments that actually are transmitted and transported, downstream to be deposited in various areas, and adjusting the channels, the shape of the river, and the habitats that are located there, the number of species, because the migration of the fish, they can't spawn, they typically swim upstream, they can't with the dam, and also rivers have been fragmented in order to create these dams. The Three Gorges Dam is the largest dam in the world. It was opened in 2010. There is a video clip here. I will be posting it on Edmodo for you to watch. Basically 1.2 to almost 2 million people were displaced off of this. Very important. It was a cropland, big area, and as you can see, it has created a huge reservoir. Some other advantages, let's say, of aqueducts or pipes, underground pipes, to transfer water from one location to another. They do provide water to areas that really do need water. They strengthen economic growth in areas because you're providing that resource that's heavily needed. But a disadvantage is you're making people dependent on that. So that can be a disadvantage. There are various case studies that we're going to be looking at through here. The first one is the Aral Sea. Just to give you an idea, just some other facts, is that it's the 4th largest freshwater lake in the world. And basically, water from the Aral Sea was diverted for irrigation purposes to various places in Russia. And it started to drain out and create problems there. Okay? And as you can see, these are some facts and problems that were arose during that time. 10% of the volume decreased. 85% of the wetlands were gone due to this process. And you can see the number of species, plants and animals that have been devastated due to this problem. The Mono Lake, again, is located in Southern California. It's where this basin took water out of the Mono Lake in order to provide water to the Los Angeles region through the LA aqueduct. And so one of the things that we noticed there is that the volume halved while the salinity doubled. What that means is the water levels in that lake dropped tremendously, and the salt's still in there, so the concentration of salts increased. Okay, and you can see state and courts now are mandating that they try to increase the levels of that lake up to almost 17 feet, and they're still in the process with this. The California Water Project basically is providing water for Southern California in those areas. And basically, this is the largest water transfer out there. They're providing water from the Colorado River, creating and building these aqueducts to divert water to areas where it's heavily needed. There are some solutions here that allow it. The Hetch Hetchy is another one. Again, it was created in 1931. It's where they took an area off of the Yosemite National Park, and from there they diverted water downstream to provide water for the San Francisco Bay Area. And so there was controversy on that. John Muir, who's in charge of the Sierra Club, who started the Sierra Club, he basically was concerned because, yes, San Francisco and those areas did need water, but the concern was here you're taking a national park area, a region, and you're flooding it to create this reservoir in order to divert and bring water in. You can see these images from here's the land and how the stream eventually evolved, and here it is right here, the Hetch Hetchy project. The Salton Sea is another one. It's where it's a man-made accident, basically by diverting water from the Imperial Valley. That region became flooded and created a channel that eventually was off of the Colorado River. What they noticed was it created unusual heavy spring runoff, and there wasn't any gates or anything to prevent the water from getting in there, and they created a flood in that region into the Salton Sink. This also, the Southern Pacific Railroads had to move a lot of the tracks that were located near it during certain seasons because that area flooded. Eventually, though, that Salton Sea, with the Southern Pacific Railroad, they did take control of this river, and they diverted the water in there. And now one of the biggest solutions is the Hoover Dam that actually is controlling water so it doesn't flow into that region. Here we have the Colorado Aqueduct. You can see the picture right here is a concrete river that's flowing. It was set up in 1928 to bring water to the LA region. And there have been some lawsuits about concerns about diverting that water, the water rights, as I had mentioned earlier, about who actually owns the water. When you look at the Colorado River, it actually flows through 5 states that are in fighting rights as to who's controlling the water in that particular area. There are 5 pumping stations located all up and down this Colorado River aqueduct, and some of the water is diverted for agriculture. The riparian rights basically is saying that you have, it's a buffer system set up to protect streams, rivers, creeks, that you can't build into a region close to it. I think by law you have to leave a 25-foot buffer from the stream. You can't build on it. You can't take vegetation off of that, because then that would create runoff, sedimentation, losing that buffer, destroying or affecting it. The riparian rights was first established and first set up as an English common law, and it's basically identifying land areas that can be shared and managed appropriately. And the owner of a waterfront land, it depends on, an owner of a waterfront land has the rights, they own that land, but they, by law with the riparian rights, have to make sure that that buffer is instilled and practiced where no vegetation is removed in order to prevent erosion of that area. Okay. Cloud seeding is another one. In regions where there is drought, cloud seeding basically is where they inject clouds with certain chemicals to produce rain. This is very controversial. They're still questioning it, but in some areas it's actually doing a really good supply of precipitation. But we'll find out more from our case studies. On here, we need to avoid wasting water. This is just showing you some conservation tips. 65 to 70% is usually lost to evaporation. We need to reduce this by 15%. And look at that, the U.S. is at 50% due to less waste by farmers, industry, and at home. So we're trying to do a better job with that. Why do we waste water? Basically, water economically is very affordable. So people just waste a lot of it. When they're watering their lawns, they're using way more than possible. And basically the showers we're taking keep going on with sinks, leaving them on as you're brushing your teeth. There are a lot of different options there that are going on. Irrigation, as we said, is the number one use of our water for farmland, but there are different methods in order to irrigate your land. The flood irrigation or gravity flow irrigation is very wasteful. I'm going to show you an image of that in just a second. There are pivots or booms that are out there. You see those around in Pitt County. And the last one is a drip irrigation. This is one my sister uses in her greenhouse business. Here you can see this one is the gravity fed. Comes down, you have these little trenches, and water flows down, and in essence, you're almost flooding the region. Here is the boom over here. It creates those concentric circles that you see if you're flying in the air. And these are the drip irrigations. You also can go to Lowe's and get those soaker hoses where you line them up. It's a hose with little holes drilled in it, and you're laying it close to the ground so it's watering the ground, not the air, loss to evaporation. And here, these are some solutions for reducing irrigation. Line canals bringing water to irrigation. Level fields, and it keeps going on. Create polycultures. We'll get into that with soils. Monitor your soil moisture to add water only when necessary. Don't grow water-thirsty crops. Always try to grow those that are drought resistant, and so forth. Farmers would use drip irrigation if they could create or build these hoses to go into those field areas. But basically, the piping or the drip irrigation is very expensive. Okay. Some other solutions, again, were mentioned. It's the same off of the chart there. And other types of water waste, reducing it, redesigning your manufacturing processes in industries, repairing leaky underground pipes, fix water leaks, raise water prices. It has been noted that if prices go up, people will tend to shy away and not use as much. Use water-saving toilets, shower heads, cloth and dishwashers. Purify and reuse water for houses. That is called gray water. Capture the water as it comes off your gutters and use that for watering your plants in the garden. We can use less water to remove sewage and other waste. There are other methods out there. They're trying to do a waterless toilets, a composting toilet to try to break it down, the materials there. And again, reducing our waterways up to 70% of the water is lost through evaporation or our leaky pipes or leaky canals that are out there. So this is important. And trying to recycle that gray water and trying to use energy efficient, Energy Star appliances and items for the bathroom. And trying to reduce or trying to get our irrigation efficiency down or get it more efficient up, to bring your water waste down on there. Okay? These are just showing you potable water resources here. Potable means drinking water. So basically when we look at this, our drinking water, our wastewater, and the treatments all go hand in hand. Okay, so for recycled water, we could use it in our toilets, reavert that gray water from the shower, collect it in a large container, and eventually that could be used for your toilets. And subsurface drip irrigation or those soaker hoses in your yard. And they are kind of neat, but they do break down. They are biodegradable, so you gotta be careful, but they are rather inexpensive and you can buy them from Lowe's. Okay, and here you can see a home that is water efficient to the on this one, water efficiency from on this side, on the left side is a non-efficient part. Over here we're seeing this one on the right is the water that's inefficient. The one on the left is efficient. They're using shower head that is energy efficient, meaning you're saving water. Your appliances over here are Energy Stars. Your toilets are a low feed in their small amounts of water. And they're using rain barrels and all outside to reduce the amount of water on the vegetation, and also planting drought-resistant crops. Floods are another problem. Okay, so here we looked at not having enough water, then we're looking at dams to control the amount of water in regions, and now what if you have too much water? Eastern North Carolina is a huge floodplain. In there, flooding occurs, as we know, in 1999 with the Hurricane Floyd. We did have the 500-year flood where regions were devastated. The Tar River went from 100 feet wide to 9 miles wide, and it caused a lot of displacement. But eventually people were able to move back in. But some regions near the Tar River, homes that were located near there are gone and not inhabitable. They're inhabitable right now. So what we have with flooding, some of the biggest concerns that we have with flooding are by the human activities. If you go in and you remove any vegetation or go in and log out all the trees, basically you're creating that land to be barren, and it creates the soil to be desiccation there. You're drying it up and it's hard, so water will run over it. Overgrazing by the animals, forest fires, going in as mining, building on the floodplains, and also when urbanization, when cities come into a region. Okay, other human activities that add to damage from floods, draining a wetlet, paving or building on floodplains, deforestation, and also clearing of the mangrove swamps that we had talked about in Unit 2. But also with floodplains, we do want to protect it. So some of the things we've noticed, rivers have been narrowed, Dams have been created to store and prevent the flooding to allow natural flow of the water. Natural levees or artificial levees, that means concrete levees, have been set up around to protect areas. What happened in New Orleans with the hurricane that came down there, actually what it did was it broke the levees. The levees were over 100 years old. They were not in prime condition, and the Hurricane Katrina that came down there actually devastated and created a problem, and the levees broke. Flooding is increasing because, number one, when you remove your vegetation, you're creating that runoff, and it goes into a river, over floods, and there you have a problem. We do want to create sustainable water use. These are things you can do by cutting your waste, raising prices, and preserving our forests and wetlands that will allow the soils to soak in that water and naturally release it to the river. And here are some other specific ways to use our water sustainably. And lifestyle changes, what you can do. These are some others as well. Eating less beef. Now that's an interesting one. Basically with our cattle, if we can reduce the amount of cattle that are in there, for your land you can grow more crops and get nutrients from that versus only growing maybe one or raising 1 to 2 cows, the same amount of area for that particular land. So if we can reduce the amount of beef production, then that will also translate to less water that we've got right there, because then they won't overgraze an area as well. All right. Thank you for listening.